Hi, my name is Danielle Carey. I'm the clinical manager of the Carey location. Today, I'm here to talk to you about Thanksgiving planning for your picky or problem eater, maybe just your cautious eater. These are some tips and tricks that might make Thanksgiving a bit more smooth for your family. So, when we think about Thanksgiving, we think about everyone coming together, lots of foods, maybe a lot of foods that we don't have throughout the year. So something that's really important to talk about with your child and to think about is having a safe food. A safe food would be something in their preferred food list. I try when we are doing a big family style meal like that to pick something that's very similar or the same as something that we would serve. So if we love mac and cheese, then we're going to do a mac and cheese side so our kids know that they're going to have a safe food there for them to eat and they don't have to worry. From there, the things that we can do is have our children come into the kitchen with us while we're preparing Thanksgiving. And maybe they're going to be pouring ingredients. Maybe they're going to be mixing ingredients. In both of those situations, they're going to be smelling the food. They're going to be enjoying that time with the family, and they're going to be having exposure. Anyone that is in feeding therapy knows exposure is so important to progressing to be able to try new foods. And an exposure counts as experiencing the food, seeing the food, touching the food, moving the food, serving the food. It's not just tasting the food. So if your child's in feeding therapy and your therapist comes down and like, you won't believe it, they touched it to their lips. That can be a really big deal for some kids. Other kids, maybe they see a new food and they just pop it in their mouth and try it. There's actually 32 steps to eating. And people who have problems with trying new foods generally have to take a little bit longer at each step to allow time for their body to get used to this new introduction. So that's another thing we can do. We can help with meal prep. We can help by having a preferred food. We can have our child set the table. They can be responsible for setting out all the plates and the knives, maybe not the knives, the plates and the forks and the napkins and the cups and spoons. Maybe they can even have a little craft that they make for name cards. Depending on their ability, we can grade that skill up or down. That also gives them a little bit of ownership in this family meal time. If your child is at the stage where they're ready to have non-preferred foods on their plate, my recommendation would be to have a regular size serving of their safe food and then keep new foods to a teaspoon or less presentation. The less you put on their plate of a non-preferred food, the more likely your child will be to try it. It is very overwhelming when you're presented with a plate of food that you've never seen before and you're feeling nervous about trying new things. So keeping those teaspoons small or those offerings small is actually going to increase the likelihood that your child will try that food. That said, if your child is not ready to have non-preferred foods on their plate, I would take a teaspoon of each food and I would put it on a salad plate in the middle of the table, not directly in front of the child. You guys can talk about those foods. You can talk about what they look like, what they smell like, what they feel like. If they're ready to take a snake test, what they taste like. And go from there. The child would be responsible for cleaning off that plate. That can be done with pushing it off with their hand if they're getting used to touching food. That could be done with pushing it off with a fork into the trash. They could use a napkin, anything like that. When you're cooking and when you're presenting these new foods, we want to keep it fun and we want to keep the pressure low. So some things I like to do when I'm trying to introduce a child to a new food is I might take a food, I don't know, like a blueberry, and I'll put it in my hand, I'll shake it up, and I'll hide it and I'll say, which hand? And they'll guess. And they think that's so fun because it doesn't feel like I'm asking them to eat that food, right? So then after they've done it a couple times and they're laughing and they're guessing which hand it's in, maybe you ask them, okay, your turn, you hide it from me. And then I typically purposefully guess the wrong one so they think that they are the best hider in the world. If they're at the step where they're bringing things to their mouth and you have something similar to a blueberry shape, you could pop it in the mouth, you could have contest. How far can we shoot it? Can we make it in the trash can? Can we make it in this cup? Those are ways to get them engaged and trying some of those foods as well. After dinner is done, they're going to be responsible for cleaning up their plate, potentially the learning plate, but they can also help us package up the leftovers. There's no expectation of eating, but it gives them another exposure and experience with the food. So they can help package up the leftovers and get that experience with it as well. Another thing that we want to talk about beforehand is yucking on someone's yum, as Melanie Potok likes to say. We are not going to yuck on anyone's yum, adults or children included. I do not love green bean casserole. I like green beans. I do not love green bean casserole. But as the green bean casserole comes out, I am not going to say, ugh, gross, green bean casserole is disgusting. Because my little picky and problem eaters are going to hear that and they're going to write that food off. I don't eat green bean casserole because it's disgusting. What I could say, the reason I don't like green bean casserole is because it's a little too moist for me, a little too wet. So I could say, oh wow, green bean casserole is really wet. Green bean casserole is really crunchy on top. Green bean casserole has a big salty flavor. So you're gonna use adjectives to describe the words, whether you like them or dislike them, then we're just giving them facts about the food and allowing the child to develop an opinion about the food for themselves. When we're presenting those new foods on the plate, some tips and tricks for especially meats. Try to keep them, I would say, no more than your thumbnail size, and have toothpicks ready. If they love dips, even if it's a dip that doesn't traditionally go with turkey or ham or whatever you're having, I would put a dip out and I would put toothpicks, and I would model dipping and tasting the ketchup or the barbecue or whatever it is off of the turkey, because that's a big step. And if they feel like they want to try it, they can take a bite. We want to keep our reactions cool, calm, and collected. No big deal. You tried that. That was awesome. It was here, here, or here. We're loving it. We don't know yet. We're learning to like it. That's kind of how I label those. The other thing I wanted to touch on in relation to Thanksgiving is how to respond to family comments. And it's so hard, right? You're having this time together as a family, and maybe another distant family member says, you need to eat more, or take another bite. Just try it. You'll like it. You're not going to gain any weight. You're so small. Anything like that. We want to shut that down as parents. It's our jobs to make our children feel safe, or caregivers make our children feel safe and acknowledge what they're doing. So we might say, he's listening to his body, because we don't need to clear our plate. We just need to fill our belly. Or we might say, she's working really hard to try new foods. I love the way that she just taste tested that. Or if it's a comment about a body, I would generally say, we don't make comments about bodies. And then I move on. It doesn't have to be anything serious, but just standing your ground, putting that boundary out, and allowing your child to build that trust with you and allow them to see that you see they're working hard and they're doing the best they can in that moment, and not let some of those comments have them backslide. So those are our basic tips for Thanksgiving. I hope that you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving full of great food and fun laughs with family. We look forward to seeing you here at Emerge right after the holiday. Thank you guys.